First of all, welcome everybody. I'm very excited today to have such a great lineup of contributors from our community. I'm going to just take a couple of minutes before we start to take the chance to share with you a couple of news from our latest weeks. So very quickly, what's up with the work we are doing with Platform Design Toolkit at Boundaryless? We just back from Milan in early October. We had an amazing Platform Design Bootcamp, the first edition. It was a blast. We had people from 3 continents, more than 10 nationalities. Some of the people in the call today were also with us in Milan. And yeah, it was amazing to have the possibility to share a new format with the community, a format which was much more to the user's perspective. So yeah, it was crazy. We're going to have soon 2 more events coming up. One is in the Netherlands in December. It's going to be our classic 2-day masterclass format, and at the end of January in Paris, we're going to have the 2nd edition of our 3-day bootcamp. And if you stay with us until the end of the call, I'm going to share with you a discount code for people that are interested to join us at the events. In terms of content and the work that we are doing more into the research, I can tell you that I just wanted to remind the people in the call that a few weeks ago, we released our 2.2 version of the toolkit that introduced some minor changes in the canvases. There's an updated user guides, and also now the possibility to use an online template from our partnership. So keep an eye on the blog. If you didn't check this yet, there's a release note below this information. Also, probably worth mentioning that in the last few weeks, we released a full end-to-end example of application of platform design. You can look it up from here or just go into our blog. And you will see there is basically a fully explained example. It's going to be gold for anybody that is actually trying to run a platform design process. And on the last week, we released also our explanation of demystification of network effects. So again, it's a primer in understanding the nature of network effects, how this applies to launching strategies, and so on. So I don't want to be long anymore because we have such a beautiful list of guests for today, but I wanted to mention with you that soon on our blog, because we're coming soon, there's a new release of the Platform Opportunity Exploration Guide that you may be familiar with. Is the document that explains all the process that you can follow before entering the design phase. So probably in a few weeks, we are going to release a relevant update of the Platform Opportunity Exploration Guide. Having said that, today's webinar, finally, let me introduce our guests for today. We have Remco from the Netherlands. Remco is sales and marketing manager at Web Circles. Is now, and will tell us more about this project in a moment, now mainly active in Project Rockbit, which is a project basically focused on the construction site and construction site workers. I would say that is really a new way to see how the convergence between the construction industry and the knowledge workers industry, right? So Remco will tell us much more in a minute. Then we have with us Mark, from Technical Director of UN Global Platform, that is going to share with us his perspective on working with platform design in such a multinational, multi-stakeholder environment, like an initiative such as the UN Global Platform, focused on data coming from different nations. It's really, really a rich and very challenging project. And besides that, his experience in working in the government industry, for example. And finally, we have Nabil with us from Riyadh, right? Nabil, you're still there, and trying to help Elm, very important, a huge company from Saudi Arabia, trying to basically explore the potential that platform design can provide in terms of business innovation and organizational transformation. So that's just a very, very short introduction that I would say it doesn't give the right space to our guests. And indeed, I'm going to quickly open the conversation with them by asking them a question directly. So in terms of agenda, we're going to start with a round of questions that we share with our guests. And we believe that after 25 minutes or something like that, we will be able for you we'll be able to give you the space to ask direct questions or to share reflections that you want to drop into the conversation. Again, this is a webinar for adopters. We're not here to teach anything to anybody. We are here to share our experiences and to leverage on the potential of this amazing community that we are creating. So without further ado, I'm going to start with Remco, if you guys allow me. So before I start, if you have questions, please feel free to share them in the chat, or better, take note, and when we will open the space for you to raise your hand at the end of this first round, you will be asked to drop your question or reflection directly, okay? So Remco, first of all, thanks for coming here. Do you want to say some hello to our community?
Yeah, of course. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thanks, Simone, for the invite. Very pleased to be present today and to share my ideas and what we've been doing up till this day. So, yeah.
Nabil and Marcos, you may want to say crowd.
So was that me, Simone? Yeah. So hi everyone. So today we have part of our technical board. So we have members of the global community together, and we're working on our kind of technical strategy around the UN Global Platform. So I'm in a room, and everybody can wave. So we have quite a few in the room today. We also have a couple online. So we have Hatam from the UAE, Bogdan from New York, and we also have Jan from the UK as well, who's connected remotely.
Thank you. Nabil, do you want to say hello as well?
Yeah. Hello everyone, and happy to see you guys again. Let's begin.
Super. So again, whoever is not talking, if you guys can mute, that would be great. So let's start with Remco. So Remco, we had the chance to, to spend some time together in at least a couple of occasions, and one of them was the boot camp last month, and another one was when we held this kind of kickoff, platform design workshop in Rome with the whole team, and it was really, really interesting to see how you guys managed to invite all these stakeholders to the design some of the people, for example, that are in your ecosystem, I would say. So my question for you would be really focused on understanding how much in the process of designing and then validating your assumptions and prototyping this strategy that you can maybe explain it a little bit more. How much was the toolkit itself really useful? How much you came back to the toolkit and to the design that you did together? How much was the structure good for you to iterate on this project?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, to us it was very useful. I think the one of our best things we thought of was actually inviting as many stakeholders as possible to start with, because I think sometimes there's a little bit of fear to introduce these stakeholders into your design sessions, but we noticed that they are very willing to share information and share knowledge that they have to participate in the process. So our project Rockpit is about ultimately getting all relevant and necessary knowledge to the construction site to improve the relationship between company and the construction site, because they cannot and will not work together in the Netherlands, for instance. So we also brought a construction site manager to inform us about the rules and behavior on the construction site. And during the process, we saw that everybody was just stepping more close to the construction site manager to see what were his thoughts and his insights in getting this process in the best possible design. When I look at the toolkit as an instrument, it's very useful because the steps to me are very clear. When I look at the bootcamp we did in Milan, it just came to me like, okay, now I'm really getting to start understanding why the steps are chronologically like they are at this moment. So what I think the most important steps personally to me are the existing experiences, the ecosystem scan. I think that's very useful because I think that when everybody is doing it for the first time, it raises a lot of questions and you're like freezing, like, how can this be so difficult? And when shown in the bootcamp as well, when you're shown with an example, you're like, okay, that's clear. And that's logical stuff. And then switching to the value chain mapping in getting a Wardley map done, so it will help you in starting to think in existing entities, trying to see where they would need to go and what kind of role they will be playing in the near future or future. So it helps you, in my understanding, to get into your ecosystem canvas in a good way, so you can place the entities and also are thinking about the roles they will play and maybe which relationships they will have. It helped us a lot to start with, and then the entity role portrait, we've seen that that's very important, because even if you don't try, you are designing on a lot of assumptions. And so we made the entity role portrait as well for the construction site worker, because he is our main actor in the play. But a few things we saw was that we more or less started to forget the first time the purpose of what we were intending to do. So if you look at the role portraits, I think you should always look, what is your purpose and on what way is this portrait fitting into the purpose? And
somehow it's a description of your value proposition, you know, that at this point that when we design platforms, it's like, you know, you kind of try to resonate, you know, with the expectations and the potential of the system. So so you need to be, what I get from your explanation is that you need to be somehow, I would say, relevant. You know, you need to stay relevant for them. And I have a little question, a further little reflection and question before moving to the other guests for a quick round. In your experience, you know, I was particularly drawn when we spoke about this in the coming, mentoring sessions that we had. If you can share some insights on your experience in validation, because for me, you have been at several fairs, for example, where you have met your target ecosystem. So my question is more like, how much the toolkit, for example, was useful for you to write these interview scripts, or in general guide your interactions with the entities.
Yeah, it was very helpful, because we also designed the experience canvas, so you got some kind of method in your head, and that you want to validate to the core participants. And the thing was that we were aiming on validating all these people for skills that they will show on the construction side, like similar to a LinkedIn profile, but then a profile for a construction site worker. So he will not only do plumbing, but he will also do some electrician work or something like that, and can get reviewed on that. And then when we assume he's good enough, then we give him the skill into this profile. We thought they would like being able to show all their skills. They would really like that doing the interviews. We got to know that they don't necessarily want to show their real skills, their hard skills, but they particularly want to show their soft skills. So about I'm a team player, I can coach people, I want to make instruction videos for other construction site workers. So they're very helpful, and that was something our assumption was that they would like to show what they can do, but they are reflecting now, no, we prefer to show our soft side. So it helps us in getting to more move to behavior as well. So we can also try to get some more team play on the construction side, and that will help us as well in getting the context more detailed for the construction site worker, as well the construction site manager and the construction company, and to see if we can get a good overall context to have the best story possible, because we see that we constantly are moving between contexts, and context will involve relationships, etc., etc. And so we just step back in canvases again and move along. You have to unmute, Simone.
Sorry, thanks for reminding me. If I can ask you a last bit before moving to Mark, what is your biggest insight from this process? In any term, even on the project or on the tools.
Well, the biggest insight is getting to really know your ecosystem in position, role, and their entity portrait, as well as not to forget that you really need to understand the context and need to understand the story to make contact with the different roles. So we think a lot of techniques and things that we can offer, but it's all about getting them first to your story.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thanks, that was very insightful. So let's move to Mark for the first quick chat then. So Mark, when I was preparing this webinar, I made a quick reflection on your story of how we also got in touch and the work that you were doing, and I'm most interested in understanding. When we met at the book camp, on my own. So based on I guess the open source. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes? No?
Missed the last bit there, Tony.
Okay, now you should be able to.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. I should repeat.
That's fine. Okay.
Repeat
So I will be shorter. So my question is more about the difference in your experience before coming to the boot camp. So as a self DIY, let's say, application of the toolkit, and now after the boot camp, what are the bigger insights that you want to use, to further apply the platform thinking to your context? And of course, if you can give us a little bit of context for your project as well.
Okay, so a bit of context. So the United Nations Statistical Commission set up a working group to look at big data to create official statistics and also to support the Sustainable Development Goals. This was set up in 2014. I got involved a couple of years ago, and we looked at building a digital platform to support the support big data and building the capacity across the global 194 countries and all the statistical offices and about 100,000 staff of using big data to create efficient statistics. So there's a bit of context, and I think the way we kind of started off. So we had to build a platform, and I think most people think of a platform as a bit of software you deploy somewhere, then you kind of consume it. So what really helped with the platform business model and the canvases is understanding a platform business, which is from a digital platform. And that was the kind of first ding moment. And then that helped go around the kind of thinking about a platform. And then we did some work with Bill Murray from the Leading Edge. So he came in for the day, and we did a kind of day's workshop with him, which was very good. With the colleagues. And then from that led me to do the boot camp in Milan a few weeks ago. And I think the important thing about the boot camp is around the platform thinking. So, and it's different from a normal way of thinking of the traditional pipeline business. There's lots of thinking about the ecosystem and how that impacts your business and your business model. There's the kind of the engines of your platform, so the kind of sensing engine and your transaction engines. So that's the thinking around that is very, very important when you're building a platform business. And I think actually doing it and working with other people. I think there's about 30 people there on the day, and splitting up into the groups and doing the workshops and the sessions over 3 days. It was just like the best experience. It was great to learn from other people. It was great to have a beer with Remco in the evening, and it was just a really nice, fun community. But for me, the key points around the thinking around a platform business, because you don't get that from playing with the canvases and kind of messing around. It's like talking to yourself, your presentation you did, and the network effects. They're very, very important in a platform business model. So kind of talking about them, understanding them, and now I can see that, and I can see some of the thinking we did before. We weren't using the network effect. So actually on Friday this week, we're going to spend a day looking at the training and education side of our platform, because we're attracting some of the users, but we also need to know we need to think about how we educate and train the new users or future users, and build that into the platform and the kind of learning engine. So that's kind of where we are, and we're very happy to be involved with the community and using the canvases.
If I can recap a little, so the first switch in thinking, it was a switch between looking at platforms as technologies and into more ecosystemic visions and strategies. So, and the second step for you, especially after the bootcamp, was okay, but now we need to look into the network effects, as a strategy to attract more. So, how do we design the single user value, for example, or how do we design, how do we subsidize parts of the network and so on? And can I ask you a little bit more in terms of, who is, for example, in your context, who is the supplier and who is the consumer? So how are you, basically plotting this platform vision in a context of big data marketplaces like the one that you're working on?
Yeah, so we spent a day on that, actually, looking at that. So our So part of the big data platform, we need big data, and in general, the statistical offices don't have our own big data. We need to get it from a third party. So they're some of our suppliers. We also need to get access to algorithms and methodologies. So again, that's our kind of statistical community are also our suppliers, but also they're the consumers, because they're the ones that want to kind of consume the new or different algorithms and methodologies and share and collaborate in the environment and kind of get their skills together. So basically, they're very similar. So the suppliers and consumers can be all the statistical offices, but the main kind of suppliers are the kind of like the data suppliers, some around the education and training, knowledge, and a lot of them are really, you know, kind of third-party organisations, really outside the statistical community. And you know, the UNSC are very clear that they want to work with external, you know, academia and commercial organisations, because when it comes to big data, that's where kind of most of the skill and knowledge is. But what we need to do is work and collaborate with them, because we need to add that kind of rigor around the kind of processes of creating statistics around, you know, removing bias from the statistics and making sure they're, you know, done in a, so they can be called official statistics and used for policy making, etc. So, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was just noting that it's interesting to see how you said, you know, sometimes the same entity can play the role of consumer and producer. So that's very interesting, and it's also, I guess, you know, as always, a good engine to create growth inside the network. You know? So sometimes, you know, maybe you have institutions which are more like that. Approaching this context as a consumer of information and data, and then they discover that they can, you know, basically create sources for their data and even develop methodologies and so on. And it's interestingly, you know, as a way to, you know, if you think about the learning engine, for example, that you mentioned a few times, you know, maybe these learning engines, by creating these protocols and basic structures that you mentioned, like, you know, to really start, really started to see themselves as producers of value, you know, so not just as consumers. So the learning engine can be seen this way, you know, as a way to become a producer when you start as a consumer somehow. So very interesting. So thanks for the first round. Let's go for a quick conversation with Nabil, and then we try to maybe weave some common threads between the conversation and with you guys. Can you hear me? Yes, I guess so.
Yeah.
So Nabil, so I think there's a very interesting aspect of your experience with ALM, and this basically this convergence between business model innovation and organizational transformation that you have somehow experienced that. So in our experience working with you guys, it was much more focused into, as a start, much more focused in okay, basically let's use platform thinking as a way to explore opportunities, you know, because the company wanted to shift from the traditional business into new business and so on. And I guess you also realized that this entails to some extent a change in mindset, language, and at the end of the day, I believe also organizational structures and culture. So if you can share a few reflections that you have along this way, and where are you now in your understanding of how to transform such an incumbent organization into a more ecosystemic and platform-driven?
Okay, so it's interesting that you mentioned about the transformation, because this company actually started off with being a tech, or you call it digital native or technology native. So what we realized when we wanted to go into these things, we say that, okay, if we are going to do platform business, we must be able to have a unified platform thinking across the organization, because this is one of the fundamental. So being a technology company, everyone have their own definition. And this is the situation like what you say, the blind man and the elephant. So one describes digital platform as a platform business, one describes ecosystem as a platform business. Then they start to diverge, and at the end, we will never converge. So number one, what we do in the first place is we must make sure that we speak the same platform language, and we use this PDT as one of the ways to converge. So this is the most fundamental thing that we need to do. Of course, the next one, it leads to, you mentioned about innovation and business transformation. Dealing with many government projects, we realized that there is this, I would say, a perspective where we put the government as the center of the platform. And this is where I disagree, because when, especially in other parts of the world, when government try to do government as a platform or as a service and things like that, big data, open data, I noticed the pattern is the same across the globe, where they put government as the center of the platform, which is not correct. So when we try to introduce PDT, what happened is, you know the analogy of square peg in a round hole. So it is so difficult for them to map the ecosystem. I remember when Luca came to Riyadh and we were talking about this. On the first day, they were all very, very frustrated. It's just difficult to look in a different perspective. So PDT in a way helps in these two areas. One, to unify the platform thinking, and second is to speak the same language and scan the right ecosystem.
So when you say, it's very interesting when you say this helped us to change the perspective, and I recall that this was also an insight that was shared a few months ago when we did another community webinar with Ron from ING. But in general, I mean, I have had this experience looking at changes the perception of vision, for example. And what you said, what you said basically also let me think about this idea that companies may be used to target one specific customer, and then by applying platform thinking, they realize that at the end of the day, then the shift is not towards another customer, but it's more about serving a complete ecosystem, and therefore also their position in the system, in the ecosystem, needs to change. Because if you want to only serve one customer, maybe you become a producer in the ecosystem. Instead, if you want to become the organizer, the weaver of the ecosystem, your position and your approach to the business opportunity and the development opportunity needs to change. So you start realize that you are in the center. No? So, for example, for you, what was the reflection after realizing that the company had to switch, the perspective from being a government-serving company into becoming an ecosystem weaver? What was the strongest insight in this process?
Yes, when they decided to change this perspective, what they discovered was actually there are more players in the ecosystem that it's possible to generate the economic growth than just being a mere digital platform with producers. As a producer themselves, okay, initially they become a digital product, but at the end of the day, when there was an ecosystem scan, it realized a greater potential, because it is no longer in the economy of scale, but we are looking at the economy of scope. We have to listen to the ecosystem, what they are doing, it's not just between the government and the citizen and the businesses, but actually there is more than the opportunity is more than just two-party or two-sided.
Definitely. So I would love to open now, after the first round, a space for questions that may come from the audience. So if there is any question from the audience, can you chat or space? So let's just give a few seconds for people in the audience to step in. Any question coming from the audience? Okay. So if there's no question, I will continue to on my own and asking further reflections to the to our guests. If you guys have any, well, there's one maybe coming up. Mate has a question. So Mate, instead of sharing in the chat, would you mind to voice your question live?
Yeah, sure. So I was wondering, because it's of course unique to your situation and to your organization, but it's probably interesting for everybody, especially at the beginning, when you start with your stakeholders, mapping out the ecosystem and the first considerations. How much time have you been spending on this, approximately?
Oh, so whoever wants to answer, Remco, Nabil, or Mark? Just unmute.
Yeah, I'll go first. So when we started using the campuses on their own without any support or boot camp, we spent, well, actually a guy in my team called Phil spent about a month looking at the campuses, and we spent some time pulling together the platform business model, and then we actually took that as kind of background documents and used that. We produced a kind of light executive version of that went to the UN for approval. So that was about a month to 6 weeks worth of work, I think. When we did a session with Bill Murray, and we used went through it with some of the experience of the campuses, we probably did as much in a day as Phil did in about 4 weeks on his own, without any kind of support. And I think so. Probably overall, we spent a month to 6 weeks working on the canvases, but then actually turning that into a document that can be consumed by the executives at the UN. So and a lot of that time wasn't actually filling in the canvases. It was actually explaining to people what a platform business model is, and talk them through it, so they get the common language and common understanding. I think that's part of the biggest part of the effort really is the campuses are quite well formed, they're quite well structured, and they're quite easy to use. It's actually taking that canvas and then explaining that and translating it and trying to get people to get a common understanding, a common language. That's where the majority of the effort is involved.
Yeah, also I think this question is also very interesting for Remco, because you have been involved in a specific design process, while Nabil was more overarching, in an overarching position to orchestrate a broader project, but we'll get there in a moment. So Remco, what's your experience?
Same thoughts as Mark in there's a difference between designing and canvassing and getting people understand what you're doing. So telling people what a platform is about is something different. We've been doing the workshop with you, so we were 2 days in Rome together. And we had a session afterwards with all the participants to look at it again to see if we did the right things at this moment. And then more or less we brought it back to our sprint team. So we formatted a sprint team that was getting started with the defined sprints that we made out of the canvases. So from there on, we're just doing sprints and communicating to the rest who need to be involved, and we're planning to get everybody together again shortly to inform them about our progress and about our course and the change of course that we made during this period.
Mm-hmm. So before I get to Nabil asking a specific question on this aspect, if I can recall a couple of recurring comments. So I understand that in the experience of you guys, but also I would say in experience of many of our adopters, design and canvases, you said, so there's a co-creation session and moments of co-creation that include many stakeholders and many participants, let's say, to the process, and they normally work very well when they are compressed. So if you get, for example, 10 or 12 people and you want to run a couple of days of co-creation, in Mark experience was 1 day, in Remco's experience was 2 days, to really make the most of the let's say, the envisioning, canvassing work. Then, my impression and my experience also from your words and also from knowing a little bit of your projects, you need some kind of smaller team that is responsible to kick the ball forward. So essentially to periodically update the design, update the stakeholders, run the validation process, and basically some kind of leadership that can probably involve a broader group into the design, but needs to move the project forward. You need to really have a cohesive team, like a few people that are responsible, for example, to update the information and to share it with the people, to run the validation and to iterate the design, sometimes to call for new collective processes and moments. So that's really something that I believe we can generalize. So sprints do a lot of value in a very short time, and in these sprints you can involve many stakeholders, but then you need a team leading a smaller group to move the ball forward. Because we always know that in existing organization there's a lot going on, and also in our lives. So having committed teams, it's really, really helpful. And I believe also, Nabil, that's where I wanted to extend the question to you. In the teams that you have involved in these large-scale events that we organize together, what is your experience? And there's also another question coming from the audience for you, how you are developing the organization. So I would say by collecting these two questions together, how are you now supporting the teams that have been doing the design and now, and also the iterations of the design, the validation, the market prototypes, and so
on? Okay, thank you. Actually, before I answer that question, I have to say that understanding the why and what is much easier. But the how is the one that we need to see, because we cannot take when they ask how long does it take to evaluate. Okay, I'll be very brief. I have been looking at numerous methodology or process, or I've looked at so many, and we end up going back to PDT. So sometimes we don't want to fall into the paralysis of templates, and that's where I find the strength of PDT. It is simple, straightforward. If I run the workshop, I can do it in 1 day and a half to converge the understanding of platform. But if you want to run as coming to your question, so after we had that big workshop together with you here in Riyadh, there has been several follow-up with smaller groups where we take 1.5 day, and followed by a few short sessions, coaching or follow-up sessions after that. But generally, I can say, go for the masterclass, then it is much clearer, and because reading by itself, it is very difficult. But you have someone to coach you, it is going to be easy and simple.
Well, that's great. I believe in general, I think that's why we are trying to offer frequently, not these courses for people, because we know that you need this kind of coaching, and also we are creating this community in a way that people can self-coach each other. No, so I think that's also our mission for this year, to make a stronger community. We are now working on technology solutions that can help all the players in our community, both the open source players, the certified facilitators, all together to share experiences and information. But besides that, one particular question that I believe it could be interested is how you, and especially I'm referring to again to Nabil, how you are supporting these teams. So what kind of further support you're providing to them so that they can validate and experiment?
Okay, so I didn't answer the question early on. Sorry for that. Yes, so actually, after attending the masterclass and organizing the masterclass in Riyadh, what we do is we have a couple more sessions follow up with the rest of the groups individually or within 4 or 5 in the team. So it has to be. I have to treat it as if that I am the platform, and I have to look at the organization as the ecosystem. Who are the platform shapers that wants to play this role in the organization, and who needs to shape their platform in their businesses or transformation or new opportunities or new innovation. We have a local community of practice within Elm, and this is where we look out for platform shapers and people who wants to build platform. So by doing that, it is self-organizing. And we just play as a role to connect and orchestrate between them.
I can ask you, can you make a little example of connect channel? Where are they meeting? So, for example, do you run events or other strategies to connect people that want to design with people that want to offer this capability inside the organization?
Yes. So basically, we run on. We have our own so-called internal communication. So we use that. Also, sometimes we use it on as simple as WhatsApp group, and that's the most effective, where we can discuss things in the group. So yeah, that's how we do it.
Great. I mean, this helps me to stress one point, that is platform design is a kind of approach. So when you said, we're looking at the organization as a platform, that's essentially what it is. It is a space where you can weave together all these pieces, and you can create this context for supply side, in this case, platform shapers, and demand side, so units that need to develop strategies to meet together. It's really a way to look at things. So I totally resonate with that. We still have a few minutes, so I would love to touch a couple of questions that came up, and maybe we can address the first one to Remco and the second one to Mark. So the first one, it was from Vera, and Vera asked, how much time did you spend on the evaluation, if you did user interviews, and at what points? I believe you already touched on a few of these questions, but maybe you can be more specifically explaining when you execute interviews or explorations in the ecosystem? Before, after, whatever.
Well, I did them after. We had some. There have been some interviews and talks before we started the workshop, but afterwards, I've been doing interviews on construction sites with construction site managers, construction site workers. So we visited several construction sites, and we participated in 2 exhibitions, and then the exhibitions where we were expecting a lot of construction site workers to visit the exhibition, and in a way to get them to join and visit our booth. We made some fun in our booth with a boxing ball and that kind of things to get them join us, to have fun, and to win a prize. So just last Friday, I went to a company with a French fries to serve to everyone and give them the first prize, because we're going to do a lot of gamification to get more connected to the construction site worker. So to answer the question in time, it didn't take us too much time, because we just interviewed about altogether 120 construction site workers.
Well, that's not a bad number, I would say. No, so it's a lot of interviews, and this is also very interesting to for the question. You know? So this gives you also an overall understanding of how important are the interviews. Did you guys see?
Yeah, and I think also when you try to fit some kind of story as an intro to them that they resonate with, they're very willing to talk to you. And some of them just kept on talking and talking and talking, that we were like, okay, well, we just talked enough right now. Thank you for all the information, but we need to speak to a lot of other people. But that's one of the things. A lot of people are really willing to help you figure things out and to get to the best design possible.
Mm-hmm. Great. Do you use the template for the script that we have recently updated? So this also can be interesting for the people that want to do interviews. Now we have this interview template script that you can use to derive interview scripts from your entity portraits and your experience, platform experiences. So just to mention, did you use that?
Not yet. No. We made our own, and but we discussed it during the bootcamp. So in the next round, I think we will certainly use them. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a good also information for the people in the call. There is a template that you can use to create your interviews. Maybe we are going to put it in the note of the video, so you will get it. So last question for Mark. Stina actually asking about language when speaking to governments in the UN. So what was your experience, Mark, in talking about platforms with people from the UN? So you mentioned this transition between the technology aspect and the ecosystemic aspect. Any more strategies that you want to share?
Yeah, so we didn't change the language. We spent some time trying to explain it to them. So one of the kind of big moments was when we had that one-day workshop, and that kind of got everybody's thinking around language. I don't know if any of you two would like to drop into the call. So we've got Mathias and Rob. I don't know if you'd like to add anything around the language.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I would echo some of what I heard earlier. One key thing was to shift out of the digital platform mentality and start to understand the more broad implications. I think we had an awful lot of iteration as to who exactly the players were in this extended ecosystem that we were looking at, and also trying to understand, I guess, the flow of value, right, in terms of who got what, who benefited, what the manner was in which they actually benefit by being part of that partner ecosystem. So I think that was very instructive, because the efforts that we have here ourselves sit inside some broader things. And by understanding that, then you start to get a better insight as to how you can encourage or bring folks into that ecosystem. And then the other thing is, what do you actually have to do to make it valuable for everybody to be participating in it going forward, right? So I guess that's what I would say.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, so I think that the biggest thing is that we have found like a structural way how to present this, because otherwise it's quite complicated, because we don't have like a clear providers versus clear customers. So it's all a bit mixed, because there are national statistical offices, international organizations, private, etc. So I think that structure gave us a bit, that model gave us a structured way how to present it, and then also test some, how to say, use cases that can then provide information about value for stakeholders and how to maximize network effect.
So I believe that the point is really about trying to not simplify that, so actually keeping the complexity of the new vision, be patient and try to really explain based on the new flows of value, and not dropping the complexity of platform thinking, trying to make it an easy I would say an easy story. It's a complex story. It needs time. It needs to engage with that on a deeper level. But when you do that, it really brings you a broader perspectives and a new level of the conversation. So I tend to agree with that. I must say that at least in our experience, we never tried, as Platform Design Toolkit and PDT and Boundaryless, we never tried to make it simple, because it's not simple. Sometimes I believe we have been doing it more complicated than it is, but that's another story. So, well, in general, I think we got 1 hour. It's 3 p.m. CT, so we are finish our time, and I just want to open for you guys the space for our guests, the space to say anything else that you want to share with the community, or just say hello and adjourn. Anything else?
Yeah, I'd just like to, this is the work we're doing with the UN. It is a global collaboration. So, and we do have hubs for the platform in the UAE, China, Rwanda, the UK, and Brazil. So I think if there's anybody in the community who would like to get involved and help with some of the platform thinking in those areas, then please get in touch.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. We're going to resonate this message to our community more broadly. Really, that's an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, I would like to get into that as well, because I think that's very valuable. Mark also mentioned it earlier. The network effects, just talking to people, thinking together, helping each other is very valuable. And also helping each other, like when you're looking for something, there's somebody in the community that has good alternative or knows something where you can find things fast and easy. So I would advise everybody to just connect and use each other to move forward.
Yeah. Let me remind everybody on the call that on our website there is a special form in the contact space where you can apply to be involved, to be added to the community. So we have a Telegram community at the moment. We are working, as I said, to new solutions. But in the meantime, there's a Telegram group where we invite all our masterclass participants and bootcamp participants. This is a public space. There is a separate space for our 35 facilitators, but in this public space, there is the possibility for you to apply, explain to us your experience, your project, and we are going to allow you to join the community if you really have some relevant experience to share with PDT, even do it yourself. So take the chance, go on our website, contact us, and ask to be added to our community of practice. There's no direct link for the community of practice to answer the question because you need to apply for that at the moment. So in the future, there's going to be an open just opt-in community, but this is not ready yet. At the moment, you need to apply through the contact form in our website, and we're going to ask you to explain your experience before getting you in. So, well, again, that was amazing. I want to just add a last bit, as promised, the discount code for all the people that spent this hour with you. Discount code is going to give you 5% discount on our things. Really, I want to say thanks to our guests. It's been an amazing conversation, and also to all the tens of participants that joined us. Now I'm going to close the call, close the recording. That will be shared on our YouTube channel with all the notes. I would like to ask you, to our guests, to stay with us until everybody leave the channel, to just have a quick roundup and say hello to everybody. So again, thanks everybody. Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned on our YouTube channel.